I am joined by Lily Kate, a conservative content creator and the author of the upcoming book, 100 Ways Feminism is a Failure. Lily Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, just thank you for having me.
So I want to get right into it. I think the book is so timely, and I think a lot of people in Gen Z, men and women, are starting to understand that feminism is a failure, but they don't really have the presuppositional framework to understand why, but they're seeing the bad effects. Can you speak a little bit to the book, why you wrote it, and the message you want to share?
Yeah, when I got into politics, I found a lot of people were blaming feminism for a lot of different issues, and I couldn't find one person that was the resource to tell me why and all the background reasons. So I had to kind of become that. I've been studying feminism for about 3.5 years now, and it was just about time to have long form content about it. One time I was driving home from the Blaze Studios in Texas, and I had told the podcast host that I was on, I said, I could give you 100 reasons why feminism is terrible. And then I challenged myself on the drive home, and I was like, could I come up with 100? And then I did. And I was like, well, I think I have a book here. So ever since then, I've just been researching more, writing, developing. And the purpose of the book is really to so the book is going to be split into 5 different parts. The first part is going to be a lot of the really ugly history that people do not learn. Even I was homeschooled, okay, and I did not learn half the stuff that I know about feminism now. The next part of the book is talking about the contradictions that feminism is built on, and if you can get someone to believe 2 completely contradictory things in their mind, then you can control that person. And feminism is built on a plethora of contradictions. So then the third part of the book talks about all of the lies and tactics that feminism uses to keep women in, to keep itself alive, to basically just like crutch itself onward, and going onward. So then the fourth part of the book talks about how those lies hurt men, women, and children. And then the 5th part of the book talks about the theology of feminism and how in reality, Satan is the first feminist, and feminism is a very satanic idea. And it all goes all the way back to the garden, because most anti-feminist books that you know today, The Art of Woman, the Fall of Woman, The End of Women, that's what it is, by Carrie Gress. And
She's
great. But a lot of them start in the garden, and they start with the occult practices of feminism, and they start with the religious application. And I'm like, that's great. Yeah. Also, you're losing half the audience there. You're losing people who don't already have a biblical worldview. So I want to reverse engineer that. And I want to start with the history, go to the modern day, showcase how badly it's hurting people, and then go back to the garden.
Wow. As I've thought about feminism and gotten older and started to look at these things for myself, it occurred to me that feminism tells women that their femininity is something to be ashamed of, that somehow it's this weakness, this disadvantage, and it's a poorly named ideology because it tells women that femininity is bad and that they need to be more masculine. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, you're actually exactly right, because feminism's goal is to make people weak. It is to remove men from their power source, which is their masculinity, by hating on them, by nagging them, by telling them that they're toxic. But it's also to remove women from their power source, which is their femininity. Women's power source and their beauty and their essential nature as a woman comes from their femininity. And so if feminism can remove that, then they've taken away the thing that makes women unique and beautiful and hold that just like true divine virtue that women can have. And a lot of people ask me, okay, well, what does femininity mean? Like, you just want women to be chained to the kitchen counter and barefoot and pregnant all the time. And I'm like, no, I think a lot of women would be happier if they did that, and they'd feel more feminine and beautiful if they were to wear a beautiful sundress every single day. However, femininity can be defined as just a woman leading into the fruits of the spirit, a woman who is good and kind and gentle and faithful and self-controlled and all the other ones. Like, that's what femininity is. Femininity is when a woman, in whatever way her personality intersects, and I'm not going to tell a woman what her personality should or should not be, but I'm going to tell you that femininity is a warmth, it's a presence. It's, as Michael Knowles told me one time, he said, it's sugar, spice, and everything nice. And it's just something that you feel, it's something that you are, and you can feel it before a woman walks in the room. And so feminine woman has a truly beautiful presence, and feminism wants to take femininity from women.
Wow. I can imagine that as you boldly talk about this stuff, a lot of young women who have been indoctrinated and grown up with feminist ideology, put down their throats, that they respond kind of angrily to what you're saying.
Oh, kind of angrily is an understatement.
Maybe a little too nice. How do you respond to them? How do you try to reach them when they come at you with all of this anger and resentment?
I'm not trying to convince the ones who are so angry at me and just want to hate on me. I just use them to promote my videos more, you know, because you got to play the game in some ways. But it's always the women who have started thinking to themselves, you know what, maybe there's more to life than what feminism has laid out for me. Maybe there's more to life than this, you know, go to college, go get a job, work your fertile years away, don't get married, deny men, and then all of a sudden you're 40 and single. And we've heard this story too many times, you know. It's those women who are asking the right questions in the right moment. That's where my content typically meets them and says, hey, there actually is something better. There's something more beautiful. There's something more feminine that you could choose for yourself. You can really emphasize freedom. This doesn't mean you have to just like, you know, be a doormat for the rest of your life. Like a strong feminine woman is not weak. A feminine woman is not weak. Just a woman who rejects feminism is also, you know, they claim that she's a weak woman, but she's not.
You kind of are wholeheartedly saying that like feminism is something to reject. I wonder if you've heard people say this, because I have. They'll say like, oh, like I'm a first wave feminist, but like second wave, third wave, that's where it gets crazy. Is that true, or do you think that altogether it should be thrown out as an ideology?
Most people don't know the violent, militant, and radical history of getting women the right to vote. In one summer, British suffragettes caused as much damage to the British Navy and other surrounding areas that equivalent to what BLM did in the summer of 2020. They were extremely violent, extremely terroristic on the very fringes of the movement. They were always trying to set theaters on fire. They at one point got so close to the prime minister that they threw a hatchet and it missed him by a thread just to try and, you know, make awareness and raise awareness about the issue. So, you know, if people really were educated and knew the history of feminism, which I do talk about in the book, and how feminism, you know, specifically this organization called the WSPU, used mentally ill women and paid them a below livable salary for the time, who were unmarried, who were, you know, in and out of mental institutions, to go and do crazy acts of violence and expression in support of women getting the right to vote. So to me, I can't stand by a movement that does that and has that dark history and then continues to lie about their history. So I think if more people knew, which is one of the hopes of my book, that it'll educate people on this, if they knew the extent and the depth of the violence, the militants, the arson, the corruption, and just the evil of this movement, they wouldn't be so for first wave feminism.
When I think of a feminist activist, if someone says that, there's an image that comes to my mind.
And it's probably not pretty.
It's not a happy image. It's not a happy person. And you're like an anti-feminism activist, so to speak, and you're happy, you're full of joy. Why do you think that feminism, it seems just empirically from what I can see, it makes women unhappy? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, it's an astute observation. And the problem is, if you embrace disorder and chaos and anger and rebellion as your core ideology and your core motivation, you are going to end up being unhappy. It's going to end up coming out of you, and it's going to like come across in your facial expressions and the things that you do and everything that in the ways that you operate. What we focus on always grows, you know, and so if you are spending time in the Word and you are spending time asking the Lord, like, what does femininity look like for me? Lord, what parts of the feminist movement have lied to me? And like, you know, really just walking through this with the Lord, you're going to find that joy and He will lead you back to the truth. But like I said, if you embrace a movement that is only based on rebellion and hatred toward the oppressor, which in this case would be, in the case of feminism, which is a man, then you are going to have, it's going to come out and it's not going to be pretty.
You touched on something there. A lot of people on the left view the world not through lines of good and evil or truth and justice, but as oppressors and the oppressed. And the oppressed is always right, and the oppressor is always evil. And it's a very oversimplified, reductivist way to view the world and human nature. Yes, and Marxist. So I wanted to ask you, there's probably a lot of women who would call themselves conservative and men who would call themselves conservative that are like, oh, but I'm a feminist though. Like, I'm not crazy. You know, of course I'm a feminist. Can you speak to the Marxist roots of the idea?
Yeah, so really in Europe is where, as we know, Marxism really started springing up. And they're supposed to be financial principles. It's for the working class, it's for the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, and who owns the means of production. And you always got to overthrow and overthrow and overthrow. And the problem with rebellion and overthrowing, or revolution rather, is it always eats its own. But somewhere in there, in the 1960s, when a lot of leftists started taking over academia and a lot of women started getting into academia, this morphing of Marxism took place, and then there's the birth of intersectionality took place. And out of academia, you get this frisson of feminism, Marxism, and intersectionality all into the same pot, and then it mixes up and it just gets poured into all of these women who are in academia. So it's only very recently, in the grand scheme of history, that feminism has gone Marxist, but it's such a powerful framing because clearly men are strong and powerful and victorious and amazing in their God-given purpose, right? And so if you just claim that, oh, all men are oppressing women and all men are keeping, women out, and there's this big boogeyman of the patriarchy and we need to overthrow the patriarchy, of course, that's a really easy villain to paint for a movement that needs revolution. And so essentially, Marxist financial principles were applied to the relationship between men and women in the 60s in academia. And now you have men and women who hate each other just because they're men and women, because they've been told to hate each other. They've been told that the other is out to get them at all times, and they should hate each other and dominate over each other. And to be honest, to speak to the happiness of that, I don't want to live in a world where I think all men are out to get me all the time everywhere. I am way too big of a fan of all men to do that. I love men. I love all men. And I just don't want to live a life that way. And harmony is so much better. And, submitting to a man in marriage, which is one of my goals in life, is just such a beautiful thing. And I want to be yielding to a husband one day. And I'm excited for that. But everything about feminism, it has been overtaken by Marxist framing, and it has been to the detriment of many marriages and many male/female friendships, if you can even say that. And has been to the detriment, of course, of children too.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Right now, in American culture, there is a lot of talk about a vibe shift. And a lot of talk about young men, Gen Z men, turning to religion, turning to faith, conservative principles. And there's a little bit of, I'm hearing mixed reviews about young women. You hear that young single women are the most liberal,
and the most mentally unstable, I might add.
And unhappy. So right now, it seems like the conservative world is grabbing a hold of young men in this cool way. How can we better be reaching young women?
You need to be providing, or we need to be providing, an alternative lifestyle. The left is really good at marketing. They're really good at branding. They're really good at saying, look at this girl boss's lifestyle. Isn't this awesome? Didn't you want to live in a city in corporate America and get drunk every weekend and go hook up with people? Isn't this so fun and free? And they've taken what freedom means and they've just so distorted it and they so destroyed it. So my encouragement to men or women who are wanting to either get into maybe content creation, if you want to kind of join us here in the content world, or if you just want to, have fruitful conversations in your life, is you have to provide an alternative. You have to provide a positive alternative, though, because it has to be a life of hope, a life of beauty, a life of community, a life of church attendance. That's a good life. We know that that's a good life of casseroles and barbecues on Sundays sometimes and family time. That is a good life. And we need to do a better job at marketing that for conservatives. And that's, always the path that I take, and the encouragement that I give is oh, I don't want to post this family photo because we look silly. I'm no, post it. Because you are perpetuating a good culture that is constructive, that is encouraging femininity, encouraging masculinity. This is good. And so we just need to kind of start hogging the airwaves and making it more desirable to live the life that is already so good.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that in years past, conservatives were kind of known for what we were against.
Oh, always.
And liberals were kind of known for what they were for.
The ideal, we're progressing to something. Here's what,
Yeah, but you know what? I think something's flipped. I think that the liberals just seem so angry. And the conservatives seem so passionate about this picture, and we're trying to paint it come join us. It's better.
It's better.
There's something better for you. And I think that
conservatives finally learned how to brand.
We did. We got better. And even I remember at America Fest, there was a sign that really hit me. It used to be that the status quo was conservative, and to be liberal was edgy, and it was rebellious, and the young people gravitate towards that. That's how it works. That's how human nature works, right? But I saw this sign, and it hit home for me at America Fest, and it said, "Be a rebel, be conservative."
I love it.
And it's like, yeah, right now, the status quo flipped. They're like this establishment, it's corrupt, it's liberal, they're unhappy, but we get to paint this picture. We get to show this alternative vision. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are grabbing hold of it.
It's weird to be in the cool kids club now.
We never used to be.
No, right? Never as conservatives or Republicans, but like, we're cool now.
Yes.
Go us.
Yes. So now I want to ask you about the church, okay?
The church?
Yes, because I think that you've made some excellent points about why Christians should not support feminism, okay? But I think a lot of people in the church might be a little slower to like get that. Like, don't want to offend anybody. Can you speak to where the church needs to step up and oppose feminism?
Yeah, it's such an important conversation. Don't worry, I'm not going to start with female pastors. I'm going to do something so much more interesting. So if you look back at some English and French Romantic poets, namely, and philosophers, Mary Wollstonecraft, Percy Shelley, who is the stepfather of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein.
Okay.
They had a lot of philosophizing that they partook in. And out of that, a lot of very destructive ideas emerged, and a lot of those ideas led to feminism. So specifically Mary Wollstonecraft, she established or asserted that we should actually look at men and women in the context of just human beings. There's no difference. They're just human beings. Let's erase the sex difference. A woman is a human before she's a woman. And I don't want to give her too much charity here because her goal was destruction. She was an extremely abused woman, had a very, very hard life, was very traumatized, which most feminist activists are, either diagnosed mental health issues, were completely lesbian, abused as children, homeless, foster care. I mean, just truly, like, it attracts the most broken types of people, unfortunately. All that to say, and then also Mary Wollstonecraft led to a lot of stuff that Percy Shelley was saying. Okay, and here's what I want to get to. This is where the church comes in.
Yeah.
Because Percy Shelley was a poet, a very eccentric, romantic poet. And his musings created this character called Cynthia. And this character was the embodiment of a modern, free woman. And Cynthia was essentially and eternally grateful to Satan for liberating her. Wow. So a lot of the early feminist thinkers view Satan as the liberator of women. Elizabeth Stanton, who is the author of the Woman's Bible, took the Bible, took out all the parts that she thought were not great for women in the Bible and rewrote it entirely herself. Wow. And so feminism is directly opposed to the Bible because the villain of the Bible, Satan, they idolize as this great liberator of women. And, because we know Satanism is not like necessarily doing occult stuff and, candles and child sacrifices and whatnot. Satanism is worshiping the self. Yeah. And feminism is built off the premise that Satan had the vision and liberated women from the constraints of God and man. Wow. And that's why Satan's a good thing, in their opinion. So it's very important to understand that the history, the link between Satan worship and worship of the self and the rejection of the hierarchy of God and man is very much is the root of modern day feminism.
One last question for you. And I'm like excited to get the book now as we're talking. I can't wait to see it. The idea of the patriarchy. Yeah. And you mentioned it earlier. Yeah. Has been so villainized. Like most people our age, if you were to walk around Tampa or anywhere and you were to say, is the patriarchy a good thing or a bad thing? You'd probably hear a lot more people than you'd want to say it's this horrible thing. Yeah. So do you want to make a quick case for the patriarchy?
Oh my gosh. So what's funny is I like definitions of words. Yes. And I have asked many a feminist, define patriarchy for me. And they're like, evil men. And I'm like, but who? Like, who are we talking about? And they're like, but like evil men. And I'm like, I'm going to need something better from you. So the first problem I have with feminists villainizing the patriarchy at large is they don't know how to define it. The second issue I have is they have this the ones that can sort of start to define it like, oh, men are keeping women out of women's spaces and keeping women subjugated for whatever reason, which is a very, very loose definition, but I'll give it to them. It's a definition they attempted at it. The real definition of patriarchy is just a system that tracks genealogy from the man. And feminists have made it this like overblown thing. Boogeyman. And I'm like, for all of human history, we have tracked genealogy of the father of this person is the son of this person and the son of this person by the man. Yeah. That's not sexist. That's not oppressive. That's just a way that humans have organized for thousands and thousands of years and kept records of their history and their society. So I'm like, you're adding so much emotion and so much venom to this definition that most of these women can't even give me a tangible example of the patriarchy, and then they're just twisting the definition of the word that's already there. So those are the big problems I have with how feminists think about the patriarchy and how they address the patriarchy. To make a case for the patriarchy, like I said earlier, I love men. I love all men. Men are awesome. Men are so great. Men are so much more unproblematic than women on average. If there is a structure that God ordained, we have to know that it is in our interest to abide by the structure. God is not a cruel God. He doesn't do things to punish us only when we deserve it. But he doesn't do things to punish us for no reason. Yeah. Right? He brings on trials and tribulations to teach us, yes, but he also has set up systems to safeguard us from ourselves. Yeah. And marriage, specifically where the patriarchy is more prominent because you do have a family order, that system is there to protect women and children. That system is there to make society stable. And so when feminists are angry and railing against the patriarchy, to which of course they can't define, they're just angry at the structure that God has put in place to keep them safe. And isn't that so human? Yeah. Really?
It's in our nature, this rebellious
we fight against God, even though he knows that what he's doing is going to keep us safe. Yeah. So in that way, I do have a lot of compassion for feminists, is they hate the guardrails that God has put out for them, that he has set up for their own flourishing. And they're trying to do something different. And as we know, it's not going well for them. Yeah. It's very destructive. It leads them down a very bad path. And so I can't be angry at feminists because I believe they've been deceived. Yeah. Deeply deceived by the feminist movement. Sure. They are the victims of feminism, 100%. Children, I think, are worse victims of feminism, but especially the ones who are not able to even be born because of feminism. And it's the most deadly ideology we have. Communism and fascism combined haven't even done the amount of damage that feminism has done by way of abortion. But the point is, I have compassion for them because they are so deceived. They don't know how to define anything. They don't understand the basic contradictions of the movement, yet they subscribe so earnestly to it. And they accuse me of not being a woman because I'm not a feminist. And I'm like, any movement that feels like I owe it my life just because I'm a woman is not a movement I want to be part of. Yeah.
And the left loves to do that. But you're so right. So many, and you mentioned earlier, so many women who buy into this are doing it from this place of deep hurt and damage. So that's why we at Liberty and me personally are so thankful for what you're doing to shine a light. And everyone go get the book, 100 Ways Feminism Has Been a Failure.
Yes,
is a failure.
Is a failure.
Yes.
There you go. You got it.
I got a sneak peek of the cover. I won't give anything away, but it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So Lily Kate, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, did you find this helpful? I hope you did. Please like and subscribe, share with a friend, and also go to standingforfreedom.com where you can find more content, articles, podcasts, and our Theology of Politics series, all at standingforfreedom.com.